on 91.7 ABC Gold Coast. Normally this time we catch up with Dr. Courtney, who takes your questions, a range of questions from you about your cats and dogs, sometimes horses and chickens. But today we're going to focus on one subject. And it is a subject that for some of you it may be a little hard to hear, but it is a really important part of owning a pet. And that is when the day comes when you lose your pet. In fact, you may have beautiful memories of pets that you grew up with when you were kids, the time that you lost that pet. Euthanasia is sadly part of what a vet does, and my next guest deals solely with end-of-life care at the home of a pet's owners. Her name is Dr. Caroline Orley, aka the Rainbow Vet, and she's been kind enough to come in and talk about a subject that is really hard to talk about because it's like anything when it comes to death. You just pretend it doesn't exist.
Well, that's true.
Until you absolutely need to confront it. But before we talk about what you do and maybe some strategies for families who are going through this, or perhaps that's not too far away, you were born in the States.
Yes, I was.
So you can tell from the accent. You were, but you came to Australia 20 years ago. Did you always want to be a vet?
It's such a funny question. A lot of times in vet school, vets say, oh, I knew when I was 5 years old that I wanted to be a vet. But actually for me, it was more of a progression through life. I grew up having a lot of pets in my home. My parents were quite crazy. We had like 5 dogs and 6 cats. So
that's a lot.
That's a lot. So I always just loved pets. That bond, that connection you have with them is so strong, and they really are family members.
So what's your first memory of losing a pet?
I was probably with my horse, actually, and I was a teenager, and at the time, and this is unfortunately a common thing, parents try to shield their children from having to lose an animal member of the family. And so they didn't tell me till after she was put down. And I remember thinking at the time, like, oh my gosh, how was it for her? I wanted to be there with her. So that was quite emotional, and obviously made me reflect now upon how important it is for children to be part of the process as well when losing a pet.
And Dr. Caroline, there's so much in being a vet. I mean, there's the highs of being able to make making a pet better and seeing that reunion with its family. There's the lows when a pet is lost or in a lot of pain.
Yes.
But you don't have a lot of highs. You focus very much on the emotional side of losing a pet. Yeah.
Certainly.
Why? And how emotionally taxing can that be on you?
Well, it's one of those things, I don't think, again, it was something I thought I would do if you would have asked me 20 years ago, but now I see, and I actually see it as this beautiful sort of, that animal-human bond. So first I get to experience that and understand, that energy of appreciation that people have for their pets, and then they could transfer on to me. So that's a really important part of my work is I'll go in and help a family, and they sort of give me lots of hugs and love, and then when I go see the next family, I could sort of take that energy with me to help this family now as well.
So what's your process, Dr. Caroline? This is a very special edition of Vet Chat, if you're wondering why we're talking about pets. And in this case, we're talking about a vet who specialises in home euthanasia for pets and what is involved in that process. What is your process? So you get a call.
Yes.
Then what happens?
Typically a phone call or an email. And from there, I think it's really important that I get to chat with the owner and see what's going on with the pet, and sort of go through quality of life issues. If they'd seen a vet previously, I do work off vet referrals primarily. And so I'll chat to them about the circumstances and understand what's going on. And then then they'll start asking me like a few common questions about what the process is.
Yeah.
And
what do a lot of pet owners want to know at this point?
Well, I guess they just want to make sure that it's going to be as peaceful as possible for their pet. So I'll go through sort of step by step, what I do when I arrive. And so, I get to a client's home, and I first just sit down with everyone and talk them all through my step-by-step process. So essentially, I want to be able to make them feel comfortable and allow them to move at their own pace. I don't want them to feel rushed at all through this experience. So,
what about children? How do you involve children?
Exactly. So oftentimes if there's young children, they're quite curious about what I do or how I'm going to go about doing everything. So I allow them to ask me questions at that time. And provide them also with like a workbook to do once their pet has passed. I think that's really important.
What's that? What's involved in that?
Yeah, well, so there's a few things. I mean, same children and adults alike, like there's different ways to grieve, and that might involve drawing pictures of their pet, memorializing their pets either through like that creative outlet or reading books to support them through it as well.
So how open are you to suggestions from pet owners as to how they want those final moments to be? What has moved you? I'm sure they'd have ideas and say, look, we want to do this and this was important and we'd like it in this spot because this is, where my dog or cat loves to hang out and it'll be very calming for them. What sort of suggestions have been made that even you've gone, that's a really nice thing? I hadn't thought about that before.
It is really nice. And I always say to people, like before I arrive, just pick a really quiet, comfortable location for us to gather, which can be inside or outside. My friends, they laugh at me because I often take my shoes off when I arrive to someone's home, so I'm typically barefoot. And some people, I mean, even yesterday I helped a really beautiful family, and it was all of us were actually on their bed together with their dog. And then other times it'll be, where the dog is outside, like on a patio or something like that. And sort of that's the place where the animal feels the most comfortable, and that's an important place for the family to say goodbye.
Dr. Caroline, she's based here on the Gold Coast, known to many as the Rainbow Vet as well, but you started out just as a vet. So what made you want to specialise in this area, Dr. Caroline?
Well, I'd probably back up a step. Before I went to vet school, I was actually a vet nurse for 5 years. And in that experience, I got to see what happens behind the scenes at a vet clinic. And unfortunately, like vets can be very, very busy people. And with euthanasia, it's one of those things I feel is so important to have the time to spend with clients. And, the vets would always try their best to have that time, but sometimes the nurses would take over the roles to help managing all the cases that were happening. And I just remember one situation in particular, and obviously being present at the time of the euthanasia and watching the family sort of grieving and crying and holding each other. And it made me realize, like, wow, this bond is so strong, and this is something that needs that extra sort of attention and love and personalized experience. And the times that we were able to go into someone's home, I just saw how it was much more comfortable for everyone involved, most importantly, the pet.
And what happens then for the burial of the pet after your visit to the family home?
Of course. So there's 3 main options. So the first one would be a home burial, as you mentioned there. Gold Coast City Council don't have any specific regulations for burying your pets in your backyard, which a lot of people are curious about. So, I mean, they do have a few recommendations, which I always talk through with owners. But I feel like it's a beautiful option because it offers that place of remembrance, in your own garden. So besides home burial, there's 2 other options of cremation. So the first one is called private cremation, and I partner with a really beautiful family-owned business on the Gold Coast called Pet Angel Funerals. And so they meet me at the client's home following my service. So I wait for them to arrive, and they transport the pet to their facilities, and the ashes are returned back to the owner. The pet's returned back within a week. So that's also lovely because people can then decide if they want to scatter the ashes or keep them at home. The third option is also involved with cremation, but it's called group cremation. And what that means is the pet is cremated along with other pets at Pet Angel funerals, and then their ashes are scattered peacefully at the beach. So at least you know that the ashes are going somewhere beautiful, and you could always go there as a place of remembrance as well.
Yeah, it's funny. And again, all things that you probably don't think about.
Of course.
Until it happens and then you lose your pet. Do you find that there are some owners who had such a close relationship with their pets that they're reluctant to perhaps get another pet, or do you find the opposite? Just because of the pure love of animals, regardless.
Of course.
Yeah.
I mean, you definitely need to grieve following the loss of your pet, and it's hard to know exactly how long that's going to take and when you might feel, sort of ready or comfortable enough to allow another loved pet into your life. I guess with some of my clients, they're so beautiful, they'll send me emails maybe a year later and just say, here's a picture of my new dog and I'm so happy. And I guess that's the one thing I've learned too is, we want our pets to live our entire lives, but the beautiful thing is we've lived for their entire lives.
That's a beautiful way of putting it. And I suppose the other thing too is other pets, you must see, especially if they lose their best mate.
Of course. Yes, so I always encourage the other pet to be present at the time. Sometimes you might have like another puppy there and they're quite bouncy, but most pets seem to settle down like when I first get there and have a chat because they see me as a friend entering the home. They don't know like why I'm there, and obviously I've got treats for them and they're all happy too. And so I feel like when the other pet is present, they're able to grieve the loss of their best friend. And it's hard to know exactly how they'll react. Like some pets are quite distant, like they'll want to be in another space. Other times they'll actually I had a beautiful experience. The other dog came up to the one that had just passed and cuddled up next to it and was like licking around its mouth. I mean, obviously they're probably checking for breath, you know, but they know that the other one has been going downhill and starting to suffer. So they're quite aware, and, it's important for them to grieve too.
Yeah, and I know that, I know if you're listening right now and you've been through this might be quite an emotional thing to hear, but it's been so lovely having the opportunity to talk about it, but in a space that will, give people some ideas and direction, when that time comes. So look, I really appreciate you coming in, Dr. Caroline Orley.